Hello and welcome. Today I am talking about 20 practical tips for self-love. Now, a gentle, I made a general outline to kind of guide me so I don't go so far off trail because sometimes when I channel that can happen. So, to keep us on track, you may see me looking over here, but just trust the process. So, self-love is something that I've come to not only learn, understand, practice and embody over the last 11 years of my self love spiritual journey. And here are some of the top ways that you can practice self love, especially if you're just getting started and you're like, I don't even know what that means. I know I talked about in my recent email about how in 2012, when Just Rocks pulled me aside and said, uh, spend an entire year loving yourself, and I had no clue what he meant. I get it. I get it when you're in that space and you don't quite understand, like, well, how do I get started? I don't understand what this whole self love thing's about. And let me tell you, it's more than just bubble baths and pedicures and manicures. That's self care. And there's a big difference between self care and self love. So today we're going to get into what exactly you can do to start loving yourself a bit more in 2025. So, one of the things we can do is practice self compassion. So, self compassion is not always easy, especially when it comes to anytime we feel like we've messed up or we've maybe not reacted in a way that felt good, or maybe we have certain aspects of ourselves that we don't like as much or that we are not as fond of. There are different ways that self compassion can really benefit us, but there are certain areas where it can feel a bit more challenging. So start to notice, like, where do I tend to beat myself up? Can I start having compassion for myself there? Where do I start to put myself down or judge myself or judge others? Like, maybe you judged someone recently. Like, can you have compassion for the part of yourself that's judgmental? Right. And that's not to excuse the behavior, right? When we maybe behave in a way that isn't quite truly aligned with who we are. However, can you find compassion for that part? Because typically when we act out in certain ways, it's a younger version of us that doesn't feel safe or feels judged themselves or is projecting onto others. Like, there's all these funny ways that um, when we're not feeling quite ourselves, that it can show up. So self-compassion is big. So start to look at, where can I start to really find more compassion for myself, especially in the places where it's harder. Setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is another place you can really start to practice loving yourself more. If you're someone like me who has had a past or maybe present of people pleasing, codependent patterns, maybe you have a really hard time saying no to people. Maybe sometimes you feel kind of bulldozed by people, or you don't stand up for yourself, or or you take on more than what you really want to, or maybe you are someone who kind of jumps in and gives that automatic yes without taking the time to really, like, sit with it and say, like, is this something I really feel like doing? Is this something that really feels aligned for me? Is this something that I really want to do? Setting boundaries and starting to say yes where it feels good in your body and you're like, yeah, I want to do that. That feels really exciting. That feels really good to me. Start noticing where you feel that whole body yes, and where you feel that absolute no, and start to give yourself a bit of space in between to really decide, like, is this something I want to do? Is this something that feels correct for me or aligned for me? Is this something that I want to say yes to? And practice saying no. Now, at first, it may be a bit tricky. At first, it may feel like people don't like it when you say no, especially if you're a people pleaser. especially if you're someone who has kind of perpetually been a yes girl or a yes guy or person, because you're teaching people how to treat you. And so when you start to say no, if you've always been someone that says yes, like I was, then people don't always like that, but know that that's okay and they'll get over it or they won't. But that is just the universe's way of kind of like putting things into alignment and saying, like, yes, this person is for me. No, this person is not. Anybody that has a problem you saying no is probably not for you. So practice boundaries. And how do you know what boundaries to put in place? Well, a lot of that comes from, and let me know if you want to, in the comments, let me know if you want to know more about boundaries and you want me to dive deeper into boundaries. But um, a good way to start to practice boundaries is just really paying attention to, how does my body feel? How does it feel when I feel it, when it feels like a no, right? How does it feel if there's a heaviness, if there's a feeling of like, ugh, like dread, or like, I don't want to do this, or like, ugh, or if there's an excitement, like there's, you can tell by the energy you feel around it. And it takes time to kind of understand and cultivate that. But the first step I would say is give yourself time. Give yourself a pause, a minute, a beat. Give yourself a day to decide, is this something I really want to do? And so you can say to someone, you know what, uh, I'd really love to give you an answer, but I'm gonna have to sit with this for a minute. I'm gonna have to give it a day or a week or whatever, right? Give them a timeline. I'll get back to you on this. And if it's something they're like demanding to know right now, well, then it's a no, right? If they have to know this second, like they need to urgently know, and you haven't had the chance or the opportunity to really sit and see, like, is this something I want to do? Then let it be a no. Other times where it feels like maybe not quite so sure is if it feels like a maybe, like, oh, I don't know. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? It can feel a bit confusing. So that is also another indicator that it's either a no or you just need to give yourself more time to really feel it out, or to think it through, to say yes or no. So boundaries are a big way that you can practice really loving yourself more. Declutter your mind. So journaling can be a really great way to process things, to process emotions, to process feelings, to kind of work things out in a real way. And there is something to be said about putting pen to paper that is so much more, not only inviting, it becomes more of like a ritual, but it also feels really good to kind of like get it down, to process it that way. Like you can type it out, but like there's something that happens in your brain when you put pen to paper and actually write out like what you're experiencing, what you're going through, and you can kind of read it back. When you read it back, I invite you to really look at it as if you're someone else. So like say you're a friend reading this, you know, this entry. Like look at it as like, okay, if I was my best friend reading this, like what advice would she give? What would she think about this, right? Or what would they think about this? Like really look at it from an outsider's perspective. And it will start to give you a little bit more insight, because sometimes we're so close to what we're going through or what we're processing that we can't kind of like wade through the emotions or wade through the what it is we're experiencing or what it is we're feeling. So taking the time to like journal, to write it down, to like put it pen to paper can be really helpful. So another way to really practice self love is to celebrate your small wins as well as your big ones. So, big wins are a huge thing to celebrate, and oftentimes we don't even do that enough. But I really also encourage you to celebrate the small stuff. Celebrate all the steps you're taking to creating the life that you desire, or to having making the progress that you're making. The fact that you're here listening to this video, like celebrate that. Celebrate that you took the time out of your day, which I'm so grateful for and thankful for. But thank yourself for taking that time to work on yourself, to develop yourself, and not from a place of like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I need to change, but we're always evolving, we're always growing, and like how can you celebrate all the ways that you're making progress? It's about progress, not perfection. So take a look at and really celebrate those small wins. Speaking affirmations, so really kind of speaking kindly to yourself. Like I think of this as like speak to yourself as you would your best friend, right? And hopefully you treat your best friend really nice. But like really talk to yourself in a loving, kind way, because a lot of times we're really hard on ourselves. And that I know, like when I was at the kind of like pinnacle of my safe self-hatred, I would say the meanest things to myself. I'd either think them or I'd say them out loud. And so it's really important to just be kind to yourself. Like if you're like, I don't love myself, I'm not into this self-love stuff. If it feels corny or cheesy or whatever, that's great. It's supposed to at first. And it's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable because there's a part of you that's resisting it. And if you're resisting it, that tells me there's a part of you that actually needs it really badly. And so let it be awkward, let it feel weird, but ultimately just start talking nicer to yourself. And the more you start talking nicer to yourself and affirming your beliefs about yourself, remember, we tell ourselves stories, and that a lot of times will dictate how we feel and the actions we take. And so you want to tell good stories. Tell stories that make you feel excited to be alive. Tell stories that feel good, right? So start to look at, what are some ways, what are some things I can do to start affirming myself and start being kinder to myself and more loving. Now, if this is something, writing affirmations or mantras is like a challenge for you, if you feel like that's something you struggle with or you're just not sure how to do it, whether it's self-love or body, I actually have audios for both, along with printables you can print out or cut out and put in a jar. Sometimes I like to put them in a jar and pull one out for the day and then practice like just saying it throughout the day. This will help in a number of ways. One, it'll help kind of keep your mind out of the self-loathing gutter, so to speak. It'll help you kind of focus on like what's good about me, right? And what can I focus on, and how can I stay present in this moment? And having like a mantra or an affirmation to recite kind of throughout the day and just kind of check yourself, especially if you really struggle with beating yourself up. This can be a great way to do that, a little tool to kind of like help you keep on track throughout the day, just to remind yourself. And you can take a picture of it and put it on your phone. You can just kind of pick one out daily and walk around with it and like keep it in your back pocket, right? And just remind yourself throughout the day, like, oh yeah, that's right. I am pretty great, So really let yourself really affirm yourself and say kind and loving things to yourself. Now, another thing you can do is when we're talking about body based, is start to really nourish yourself. And I'm not here to tell anybody what to eat or what to do or how to do it. But I can say that when I eat things that come from the earth, when I eat things that are whole and healthy, and I feel good. Like I feel good eating those things. So I really tried to eat the healthiest way possible. And that in itself has been a real journey for me. But when it comes to your body, there's so many ways you can nourish yourself, right? It could be like, yes, eating better foods, drinking more water. And it's not about fully eliminating things, but just see if you can find a way to supplement things. For example, let's say you like Snickers bar. There are actually recipes out there where you can make little tiny, Snicker bar treats out of things like dates and cacao and really delicious things that taste just like a Snickers bar. So see, how can I like find alternatives? How can I maybe take my favorite food and make it in a way that's just a little bit healthier, right? So really like nourish your body. You can also do this by dancing, by singing, by moving in ways that feel really fun to you. You can do it by drinking more water, like getting more sleep. Like there's so many ways you can nourish your body. So look at the ways you can nourish your body in a way that feels good to you, more joyful. So I should say move joyfully. That's kind of part of a little bit of what I said earlier, is like really implementing movement in ways that feel good to you. Movement for me was such a struggle for so long. I felt so much resistance to it. I now have a deep understanding as to why that was, and I'm not going to get into that in this video, but movement can be a really powerful way to feel more joy in yourself and your body, can help you really get grounded in your body and feel connected to your body. You can do this through dance. Some of the ways I like to do it is like dance, roller skating. My friend here has a big open space, and so we'll go and put music on and throw on a disco ball and some lights, and we'll roller skate in the barn. It's yeah, it's a lot of fun. So like find fun ways to move. I love to swim, I love to dance. I'm currently looking into like, ooh, can I maybe start taking some dance lessons? Like I want to try bachata. Like I just, that's kind of come across my come into my awareness, I should say, recently. So I'm like, ooh, I think I want to try some bachata. Like it's very much about dance and central movement, and it just looks like a lot of fun. So, how can you find fun ways to move your body? Um, this, for those of you who live in cold weather places, maybe it's going ice skating or going sledding. Like, play like you were 5, right? Have fun and go do things like you were 5. Now, if you have physical limitations, that's okay too. But just find things you can do that feel good to you, that are fun, in a fun way to do that. For example, my dad, he got a vibration plate, and he has a lot of mobility challenges, but he's able to use his vibration plate as a way to kind of just get some movement in there and get his body kind of like the blood pumping and things circulating. So there's always a way. There's always a way you can incorporate some form of movement that feels good. If it means sitting in a chair, putting on some music and moving your arms, like whatever it is, like let yourself do it. Rest. Again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but really taking time to rest. A lot of times we feel like rest is such a like waste of time, right? You'll hear people often say like, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead." No, 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 no. Sleep is so important. It helps with brain function, it helps with hormone balance, it helps with so many processes that our body goes through that we don't even understand, right? So, like, sleep is important. Let yourself sleep, let yourself rest, give yourself time to I want you to really start to shift the way you think about rest. Think of rest as productive, because it actually is. It's a productive way to kind of reset the whole nervous system, reset your thinking, reset. I will tell you what, in some of the times where I have felt the most lost or felt confused or felt frustrated because I didn't know what to do next or where to go well next, or I felt overwhelmed, one of the best things you can do in those moments, if you can, is to take a nap. Because it stops that forward momentum. And you'll hear Abraham Hicks talk about this a lot, right? If you're wanting to manifest and your train's kind of going off the track, so to speak, I'm paraphrasing, but when you have these rampant thoughts or this, really strong emotions or feelings, and it just feels like they keep going, and you're like, just feeling like overwhelmed or anxious or just stressed or whatnot, the best thing you can do for yourself is like stop and go take a nap. Literally. It's like a 2-year-old. It's like you need to stop the train and go take a nap. And what happens is your whole system will reset and you'll wake up hopefully feeling better. I know a lot of times I end up feeling better. Sometimes you may feel a little sleepier, but just know that rest is so, so important in loving yourself. All right. So I'm going to take a little drinky drink here. Getting my throat motor going here. All right. Another thing you can do is really pamper yourself, like make living a ritual. I just wrote channeled a whole poem, and maybe I'll share it here. Let me know if you want if you want to hear it. But I channeled a whole poem about like living deliciously, and it's really about creating ritual and like really pampering yourself. And I'm not saying to the point where you forget all your responsibilities and you're like, forget the world and forget my family and whatnot. But I'm saying like, just take things down a notch, like slow things down a bit, breathe, get yourself some flowers, take a nice sensual bath. Like, how can you bring in more just like softness and deliciousness and the good juicy stuff into your life? How can you bring more of that into your life? Like, really nourish yourself and your body. And this doesn't have to just be exclusive to you. So this can be done for the whole family, right? Like if you have a busy family and things like that, how can you all just like take it down a notch and just slow down and breathe? Can you breathe together? Can you stretch together? Maybe you take a little time out and do a little dance party together. Like all of these things are really good for the nervous system. And when you feel the energy in the room like getting higher and higher, not in a good way, this can be a beautiful way to kind of like bring everybody back down, to calm everybody back down. I know sometimes that can be easier said than done, but oftentimes kids will be receptive to whatever it is you're doing, they want to do. They just want to be with you, right? So, like, how can you bring that into their day too, right? How can you maybe make, you know, things just a little bit uh, more softer, sensual, nourishing, beautiful. One of the things I like to do is incorporate, like, I make my meals beautiful, right? And this doesn't have to take a lot of time. You can make your meals look beautiful. You can take the time to just place them on your plate just a little bit nicer. And it feels really good, right? So, like, how can you really pamper yourself and really nurture yourself, right? This could look like decorating your space, or, doing some skincare, or nourishing your body, taking a bath, right? There's so many ways, but like, how can you add just a little bit more pampering into your life? Number 10, like listening to your body. Whew, this is a big one. So, listening to your body is so powerful. I have had a long history of not listening to my body, and it took me a long time to get there. But I will tell you now that the body was the answer to everything. I find it so funny that the very one place I was avoiding, the one place that I was scared to go, the one place that I had neglected the most was actually the answers to everything. So the body is the place where everything is happening, and that it's trying to communicate with you. It's trying to speak to you. If there's places where you have tension or soreness or maybe discomfort, or maybe you're having stomach aches or whatever it may be, your body is trying to express that something is off, right? If we're not feeling good in the body, there's a reason for it. It's not for nothing. And a lot of times we just think like, oh, we have a cold, or oh, yeah, I have a headache, but there's something there for you. There's something that your body is trying to express to you, and we haven't been taught how to listen to our body. So if that's something you want to know more about, definitely keep following along, because you're going to learn about that. All right, so number 11. Now we get into some of the spiritual aspects of how you can really start to incorporate more practical ways of self-love. So meditation can be a really powerful tool to not only help you kind of calm the nervous system, calm the mind, but it can also help connect you to your intuition, to your inner guidance system. Kind of, I like to think of it as like your inner GPS. Like, it can really help guide you along your path, right? Our souls already know the way, but we're here to walk it out. Like, essentially, that's what we're here to do. So, meditation can help connect you to this very powerful aspect that you have within yourself, right? Some call it your intuition, some call it your gut feeling, some call it your higher spirit, source, whatnot. It is the very thing that's guiding your life. Now, it's up to us if we're listening or not, but that's a whole nother video. All right, connect to nature. So there are so many fun ways you can do this. Connecting to nature can really help also reset the nervous system, but it also requires, it depends where you live too right now. Like where I'm originally from, it's a little cold and there's snow sometimes. So do what you can when you can and do it where you can and what feels good to you. Now, some people like that cold feeling of snow. That's cool too, right? But it's like, how can you get out in nature more? Even if you're just stepping outside for the day, taking a little walk, just going out, appreciating nature, connecting to the sun, it's going to help kind of revitalize your whole system when you get out and connect to nature. Another thing I would really highly recommend, and that's something easy to do, is a gratitude practice. Now, you can sit down and journal like 3 things you're grateful for, that sort of thing. But I also, something I personally have liked to do that I've done in the past is writing a little gratitude jar and every day kind of writing it down and popping it in a jar. And then at the end of the year, just really like looking over it over the course of, the entire year, which can be really fun. Especially like you could do this as a family, you can do this just with your partner, you can do it solo. Either way, it's really about appreciating what you have now, appreciating your life. When you have gratitude, have an attitude of gratitude, life will reflect that very thing back to you and more. So it's really about cultivating gratitude and really kind of, it also takes us out of a place of like maybe complaining or excuses or like what focusing on what's going wrong, and helps bring us to the present moment and has us taking a look at like, what is there really for me to be grateful for, and just really appreciating the life you have at this moment right now. The fact you're breathing is something to be grateful for. The fact that you have, your senses, is something to be grateful for. There's so much to be grateful for, and it can really help kind of bring you back to the present moment. Engaging in creativity. This is another great way to practice self-love. I personally love to paint, to draw. Like I really kind of just allow whatever wants to come. There's, I'll go in like little spurts or phases where I'll like create jewelry and then I'll create paintings, or, whatever I'm feeling called or inspired to do, I'll just let myself do that. And I let myself do it in a very like fun and playful way. I don't get too in my head about it. I just let myself create and kind of flow with whatever's coming through me. Now, this takes a bit of practice. Like if you're someone that's very logical or has a hard time kind of letting go of perfection, sometimes it can feel difficult or challenging to really let yourself play in that way. But the more you practice, the better it gets. And it helps connect you to your creativity and your intuition. And so when you express yourself creatively, it can be a really powerful way to really cultivate more self love as well. So, with that being said, also you can create morning rituals like how you want to start your day. Now, this a lot of times when people think rituals, they think like, oh, it's got to be this long, intensive, super lengthy thing, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a quick lighting of a candle. It can be taking a few deep breaths. It can be, putting out some flowers and creating a little altar that you meditate, next to every day or whatever. It doesn't have to be long and extensive and this like big crazy thing unless you want it to. But just creating a bit of ritual to kind of like start your day can be a really beautiful way to like feel really grounded and centered within yourself, and to kind of, practically kind of set the tone for your day, I guess you could say. So there are a lot of ways you can do that. Just start having fun and brainstorming like, what are some fun ways I can create morning ritual? Let me know if you want a video on that. I can put some ideas together for you. Okay, now when it comes to how to love yourself in um, some practical ways with people. Okay, so there's loving yourself individually, right? That can be easier sometimes than when you're in a relationship. And what I mean by that is like when we are coming into contact with other people, right? We're coming into contact with other people's perspectives, um, projections, experiences, trauma, fears, as well as all the good stuff, right? So, like, you could have I've said this before. You can have 100 people standing in front of me, right? And each one of them are going to have their own idea about who I am. But none of those are necessarily true, right? Because I'm the only me, and I'm the only one that knows the truth of me because I'm experiencing me. And even as myself, I have a certain filter, perspective, story, whatnot that I see the world through, right? I think of it as having like sometimes like rose-colored glasses. I remember before I left my marriage, like I had rose-colored glasses on, and I was seeing my relationship in a certain way. And when I was able to take those glasses off, I saw it in a different way. And now I see it, 8 years later, I see it in an even more different way, right? So we're always growing, we're always evolving, and the way that we see things and the way that we perceive things changes as well. So when you're talking about self love and relationships, we're talking about relating to others. And that's when things can really get interesting, because when we're doing individual self care, self love, that sort of thing, we're only dealing with us, right? Our own thoughts, our own beliefs, our own opinions, our own emotions, etc. But once we're bringing in someone else, well, now that's where we have a tendency and an ability to get triggered potentially, right? And now we're dealing with someone else's experiences, fears, triggers, traumas, etc., beliefs, all of it, right? And that can, now we're dancing with two different energies. And then you bring in more people, it just goes on and on. So, to be and find and cultivate self love in relationship, let me tell you, relationships are the boot camp of spirituality. They will teach you so much about where you've healed, what still needs healing, uh, where the growth opportunities are, where there's opportunities for expansion, where your shadows are. Like, relationships will teach you a whole lot about you. So, how do we find self love in relationship to others? First off, we choose supportive people. So, being in community with like minded people, supportive people can be really helpful, first of all. Now, we can't always do that, right? We can't always be with people who are just like us and like think like us. And actually, it's good if we also do hear other people's life experiences, perspectives. It helps shape our understanding of the world, right? If you grew up in a small little town and you never left and you've never gone anywhere else, and all you have to go off of of your understanding of the world or other people is through the news or media or movies, you're going to have a very kind of narrow view of what people are actually like, or what the world is actually like. So that's one thing I love about travel. It broadens your experience, your understanding, your you get to kind of like come up to, or come up with, you get to blend kind of with the environment you're around and see like, oh, what do I like about this, and what do I want, what's for me and what's not for me, right? But it helps, like, I think of it as like soup, right? Let's say you have this base of soup. Let's say it's like a, I don't know, tomato based soup, right? Well, now you're trying from this culture and this, flavor and this design and this style and this person's personality, whatever. Like, right? You're coming across all these other ingredients. And then you get to say, like, well, what do I want? What, I really like that from that person's perspective. So I'm going to put that in my soup, right? Like, and you just kind of pull from these different places of like what feels true to you, what feels aligned for you, and what doesn't, right? I always think of it as like, take what you want and leave the rest. And so it's important to really have those supportive people that you can go to and talk to, and that will hold space for you. And some people don't have that at all, and that's why I encourage you to be here, right? Because you can find that in sometimes online spaces, or in-person spaces, but find a space where you feel comfortable and safe to share, to share your emotions, to share what you're going through, like a place you can be real and be really you. So having supportive people is really important. I'm not going to get into like all the dynamics of that, but that's a good place to start, right? Start surrounding yourself with supportive people, with people who get you and see you and can support you and celebrate you. Next, communicate your needs. One thing that I've experienced in relationships is that if someone doesn't express their needs, let's say they have needs and they don't express them, but they expect you to know what they need, that can create a lot of resentment. So if you have someone who isn't emotionally available and they're not willing to share what they need, but then yet they're getting upset with you for not meeting their needs or supporting them in their needs, even though you didn't know because they didn't tell you, well, that can be problematic. So you have to be willing to communicate your needs, whether you're on the receiving end of that or the giving end of that. But ultimately, if we don't ask for what we want, we don't get it. If we don't ask for our needs to be supported, the other person doesn't know. And they're not going to just probably not just assume what you need. Some may, but ultimately, it's our responsibility to express our needs and to get our needs met. And so, communicating your needs is a very beautiful and important way to really help you get your needs met. Let's see. The next one is releasing toxic ties. Now, sometimes this is nuanced, right? There are some people where it's like, yeah, clearly cutting cutting this relationship off. It's not good for me. It's not serving me. It's very toxic. Like toxic behaviors got to go, right? But then there's some relationships where it's a little more nuanced, where maybe, their family, and that too is not to say that you can't, no one, I know societally it's looked down upon to like, cut off family members, but sometimes it's necessary. So don't let that be a deterrent as to whether or not you have, a tie. If you have a very toxic relationship with a parent, um, there's either a need for boundaries or maybe there is need to disconnect, right, for a moment or forever. But ultimately, it's first getting clear on, okay, is this someone I can work with? Like when it's a relationship where there's some toxic behaviors, things like that, is this person someone I can talk to? Is this someone I feel safe to talk to? Is this someone I can actually have the conversation with and potentially, do some mending and repairing? If not, is this a person that's even important in my life? Like, or